just want to welcome everyone to another episode of Behind the Sweet Science, a boxing podcast. We have a very special guest today, my boy, one of my best friends, and one of the reasons I got into the sweet science, my man, Vinny Casal. How are you, Vin?
What's up, everybody? It's a pleasure to be here, Chris. Talking to you about boxing is always one of the funnest things. The fact that you have such a passion for it makes it even better. I know we're going to be talking about one of your favorite fighters of all time, so I got to jump on this for that. And it's going to be fun. We're going to have a good time. Love
Right,
talking about the classic fights, so we're here.
right. We're going to talk about Gatti Baldomir and just show off the shirt real quick.
It's an absolute classic.
It's going
Great
to
night in
be
Atlantic City, Boardwalk Hall, both of us in attendance.
it's going to be the 20-year anniversary on July 22nd. So it's 20 years since the fight. We were
Also, a
lucky
very
enough.
special day.
It was also my birthday, ironically enough, right? It was my 19th birthday. So luckily enough, we were able to be in the building that night. We went to a couple of Gatti fights in the past. So this is definitely, even though it was rough, he lost, but it was definitely another great fight with Gatti. And we're gonna dive right into his opponent and kind of talk about, where Carlos Baldomir came from and his path to meeting Turo Gatti. So he lost one fight in June of 1998 against a guy named Alberto Cortez, who was a fellow countryman, Argentine, one of those guys in the inflated records, had about 70 wins, a handful of losses. And Baldomir lost that night, and then he went on about 8-year win streak where he didn't lose a fight. So he wasn't no stranger to defeat. He lost a couple of times before that fight, but for whatever reason, something clicked in that fight, and he just started rattling off wins consistently over a couple of year basis. One of the big wins that he got was over Joshua Clottey. It was actually DQ. That was in 1998. He beat Clottey. It was a lot of holding, a lot of wrestling, a little ugly fight, but he got a big win against Clottey.
Yep, he fights ugly, but he fights hard.
Right, and Baldomir is one of those guys that constantly comes forward, puts the pressure on,
Yep.
and he keeps up his wins. After that, he won a couple of fights at home. Then in June of '01, he fought against a Danish fighter. A lot of these Danish fighters, same thing. They get the inflated records, and they try to bring in some easy competition from across the world. And they bring in Baldomir to fight a guy named Hassan Al, who was, I think, 25-0 at the time. And Baldomir took a big win over him. He actually had a draw with him, and then he had a big win over him, and he won a version of the WBC title, which I'm not even sure they have around anymore, but it was called the International WBC belt at welterweight. So this is a couple of years in the making for him to finally climb the ranks and get a shot at the title.
Yep, and I
So
wanted to say too, he had a well over 10 fight win streak leading up to the Gatti fight.
right, yeah, like I said, he didn't lose for about 8 years.
Yeah,
He had a few draws in between too, but he didn't lose any fights. And that's including at home. It seemed like even though he was an Argentinian, he was a legend after he won the belt, but before that, it didn't seem like the country was really taking to him. And they were kind of matching him toughly, and he had about 9 losses before he lost that last fight to Cortez, and then went on a really really good streak.
yeah, massive win streak.
Right.
And then he got his big notice moment against Zeb Super Judah in Zeb Judah's hometown in the Garden. It was a lackluster fight for Zeb Judah fans because probably didn't take the fight that too serious. People are saying was a Larry Merchant said, spoke to a few gym heads. They said he wasn't training as hard as he should have been. Kind of showed in his performance too. But not to take anything away from Baldomir, because Baldomir came in there and he was straightforward, barely took a step back, bombing, took his shots when he could, taunting him constantly throughout the fight. It was a good fight if you were an Argentinian, that's for sure. But if you were one of us, especially me, it was a hard pill to swallow that night.
Right. Yeah, he was playing a lot of machismo stuff that night.
Yeah,
People didn't expect
but
that. Right. Banging his
yep,
gloves together and kind of just telling Zay, hey, listen, stand in the pocket and let's fight. You
yep,
know. But before that fight, ironically, he fought another fighter that had a really good record in Miguel Angel Rodriguez.
yep, great fighter.
And that was actually a WBC welterweight title eliminator. So the winner of that fight was going to get the shot to fight Zab Judah at the time, who had the lineal WBC belt and all, the welterweight. So he
Yep,
was
had
really
a
the
lot of
name.
steam behind him.
Right. After that big win over Spinks, he took a bunch of titles,
Yep,
and everyone was behind Zab Judah, and he was getting a lot of backing. And in fact, he was getting a shot at Mayweather. He was lining up a fight, a mega
That was
fight
great.
with
That was a fight
Canelo.
that I love to watch, even though it was a lot felt. I still believe Zab dropped Mayweather that day. People argue me all the time, but it is what it is. I'm a Zab Super Judah fan,
Right,
so I feel like he definitely got him amongst the chaos of that night.
right. So before that fight with Baldomir, I mean, with Judah, he had to win a fight that no one expected him to win just to get to that fight.
Yep.
So he's been a road warrior his whole career. He's no, like he's not. It's not new to him to go on the road and to win in hostile
Nope.
territory.
Not at
So
all.
you got to respect Baldomir for that. And I think his managers should have coined him the Road Warrior. That should have been his nickname,
Yeah,
especially
because he's
towards the end of
much more
this.
than a journeyman. I agree.
Right. And he had a really nice couple of wins. Obviously, the Judah fight. I want to talk about that a little bit. You being a big Judah fan, I know going into that fight, I'll be honest, I never heard of Baldomir. I
No,
I
absolutely not.
think I might have heard something along the lines of he was training out in L.A. and they were talking about how he was like always in the gym and sparring and you couldn't hurt him unless you hit him to
Yep.
the body, or I think Jim Lampley said he got hit him with a sledgehammer to
Yeah.
hurt him. So there was some thoughts about his legend in the gym, but he didn't really come on the American scene to the win over, from the win over Judah. And after
No,
that
and even
win, go ahead.
uh, even Durham, style's not that flashy of a style, so he didn't really reach overseas, like you said. We didn't have YouTube and stuff like that as viable as an option to go check on all the fights and see who these guys are. You heard about him, maybe you caught him on an ESPN or Boxing After Dark if you were
Right.
lucky. But if you didn't see any one of those, and there wasn't many of them, then you didn't really know who he was.
Yeah.
So
And
we all
let
took him lightly, not just Zab Judah that night. All of America, all of the world took him
right.
lightly. Came and he showed up, tough as nails as he always is. Came forward, it's great, great all around performance.
Right. And unless you read about these guys in like the Ring magazines and stuff like that,
Yeah, back in the day.
back in the day, it was really hard to get
Yep.
exposure to these fighters. Like I talk about that to some of the young kids at work at the time. Listen, you don't know what it's like ordering these DVDs, on the internet and tape trading, getting those rare fights in the mail was like Christmas morning for me.
Yeah.
That was the type of monster fan that I was, still
Yeah, if
am
you
to
wanted
this
to
day.
rewatch a fight, that's how we did it.
Right,
You
exactly.
found a guy, and then we just started ordering fights left and right. Our
Right,
libraries grew, and then all of a sudden, things became a lot more easily accessible.
right. So watching that fight with Judah and Baldomir, the thing that I noticed, it seemed like Zab was just kind of, like you said, probably taking him lightly, and it seemed like he was just looking for the big shot. He wasn't trying to set nothing up,
Kept throwing the
and
uppercut.
right, and listen, that actually works when it was landing, and he was timing it properly. That was
Mm.
his best punch, and he actually hurt Baldomir. I think it was early in about third or fourth round, and I
Yeah,
think
he stung him.
right, he thought that he could just keep going to that, and he thought he could just land a big shot and knock him, to stop him. But
Yeah.
I don't know what he was thinking because up until that moment, he was only stopped one time, and that was very early in his career.
Yeah.
So he should have known he was going to go some rounds that night and get some work. But I guess Zeb just thought he was going to do whatever he wanted with him, and he was in for a rude awakening.
Yeah, after his opposition, he felt, who is this guy? This guy's a nobody from overseas. He's going to walk into every single punch. I'm going to be able to stop him. I'm faster. I'm better. My footwork's better. And just didn't take him serious. And just goes to show you, every single fighter, aside from, I guess, Floyd Mayweather, just, every now and then they just, yeah, I'm going to take it light in the gym. This guy's a nobody. Let's walk in the park. And then it bites them in the ass. Even the majority of the greatest it happens to.
Right.
But one thing I would like to touch on is during that fight, um, Baldomir landed a great freaking right hand, stalking up Judah up against the ropes, stung Judah, had him on his pogo stick, grabbing onto the ropes, holding on, became a wrestler that night for a little while, and probably the most notable moment and punch in that whole entire fight. And
Right.
that's set a big precedent for him in the future.
Yeah, I think that was around maybe the seventh to eighth round.
Yeah,
He
seventh round.
staggered him really well with like a
Yeah,
short little
it was
right
nice,
hand.
bro. It
Right.
was real nice.
Like he turned his knuckles over perfectly, and Zeb knew right away that he was hurt.
Yep.
And Zeb, he's had that history with having some shaky legs at times, so he knew that he was hurt. He started clinching on, and he was able to hold on. And it just seemed like from that moment on, Zeb didn't know what to do with him. He didn't know the type of approach he wanted to do. He didn't know if he wanted to like box him and jab him or just land, a knockout shot. It seemed like he was looking for the perfect shot. If I had to take a guess. And
Yeah, I don't think
and
he realized just what Baldomir was made out of.
right. And I think it was just too late when he started to maybe stay, oh, I have to go to my plan B. Maybe I should move a little. Maybe I should box in and out because you were able to see what the game plan was, to beating Baldomir. But
Absolutely.
obviously, before we're going to talk about any of the other fights, so Baldomir gets that big win. It was at home, obviously for Zab, and Zab was looking to fight Mayweather. It was the build-up for the Mayweather fight. Boxing was just at a time where the money was
Exploded.
there, right, and it was burning
Great
hot.
time.
And they say, you know what, we're going to have the fight anyway with Mayweather. So he wound up going his way and fighting Mayweather. And Baldomir kind of fell into Gatti's laps. This happened before over the years of boxing. You see it. One guy comes out of nowhere. He gets a big win. Now all of a sudden he's getting a title shot. And now the champion gets to look like he's the best thing since sliced burgers. He's getting a win over, a fellow contender.
Yep.
So going into that fight, obviously Gatti, we know the history with Gatti. Everyone wrote
And,
him off.
and really quick too. Sorry to interrupt, but really quick. It was noted too that Baldomir was getting ready to retire 2 fights after Zeb Judah. That Zeb Judah fight propelled him into what? Maybe you know better than me. 7 to 10 fights extra.
Right.
Right. Really, really expanded his career. Started making a lot of money. So it was a life changing fight, that fight, which brings us to the next life changing fight.
And the fight that he couldn't turn down, and that was
Uh,
against the ultimate blood and guts warrior, Arturo Thunder Gatti. A guy that we were lucky enough to go see live
Multiple
fight
times.
multiple times. And there was just something in the air when Arturo fought. I know you weren't really a big fan of him. Obviously, I was obsessed with him. He was my favorite fighter, from day one. But what was the energy like going into the building that night? And what were your thoughts on who's going to come out on top? And basically, like I said, the energy in the building and how you felt going into that night.
Just as a kid, basically, what were we 19 around the time?
Yeah, that was my 19th
18,
birthday.
19? Yeah. So just going into the arena by ourselves, you driving us there, going all the way from Staten Island to Atlantic City, talking about the fights, leading up to this fight, walking in that arena by ourselves, sitting there from the freaking first fight to the concession stand fights, and to, the hot dog vendor fight and the popcorn vendor, and then us freaking just hanging out, moving seats. Everything about that night was a great night. Obviously, always respected Arturo Gatti. Never my favorite fighter because I always admired finesse back in the day. But as an adult, I appreciate him so much more. I appreciate, the blood and guts fighters, the guy in the pocket now. I appreciate the heavy hitters. I appreciate the guys that are willing to put on a show as opposed to, the more of the flashy and the perfectionists.
Right.
So, but going into that night, it was just like I said, it was an electrical night. Walking around, seeing Chuck Zito. I believe that night we seen Buddy McGirt. We shook Joe Souza's hand.
Right.
It was all a great night. And I hated Baldomir because he beat Judah. I figured, he's not going to be able to outbully Toro Gotti. Looking at it now, after watching more fights and brushing up on all the fights, Gotti was kind of a tailor-made win for Baldomir. Baldomir came forward, the bigger dude. He probably salivated at the contract, thinking I could get this guy. Gotti. This is after the Mayweather fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Gotti after the Mayweather fight. So I'm sure he thinks that he's going to be, he learned a lot at that fight, even though it didn't go his way. He'd been touching up his game. Buddy McGirt's been helping him, establish a jab, be more of a boxer as opposed to a brawler.
Right.
So I thought he was going to win. I thought we were going to have another easy Gotti win. I thought we were going to be 3-0 at the Boardwalk Hall. Probably another knockout. But as I see it now, I realized, it was a good fight for Baldomir. Good, his management was smart on picking this fight and taking this fight.
It's funny you mentioned that too, because I was watching some pre-fight stuff with this fight, and Jim Lampley said, about the odds, that Gatti was the favorite. Now he was talking, like you just said, after the fact. He goes, I don't know what we were thinking. He's like, Gatti was tailor made for a guy like Baldomir.
Yeah, I never even seen that. Yeah, it's like so obvious after the fact, but then again, so is everything else.
Right. But one thing I want to touch on, with Gatti, obviously we're going to get into that fight. First, before the fight, I want to talk about the undercard, because obviously you said we went to the fight. It was actually me, you, and Vito Vitale, one of our friends.
Shout out to Vito.
He's not exactly the biggest boxing fan, but he was lucky enough to go with me to this fight, and Vinny to Baldomir and Gatti, and he also came with me to Hopkins and Pavlik. So he got some nice fights on his belt going to the fights. But I want to talk about the undercard that night. See if you remember any of these names. It was one of those main events, Cathy Duva cards. Like I said, we went to a bunch of those.
Yep.
So they kind of
Being in the
featured,
boardwalk.
yeah, they featured at the Boardwalk Hall, which was to this day my favorite
Yeah, it
venue.
was a great venue,
You
man.
know, really loved
It's
it.
it's it's tight, it's personal. You feel and you feel every punch that lands hard. You hear everything. Very very good venue. It's a shame that basically doesn't exist anymore.
Right. They don't really do fights down there anymore.
Yep.
But they had a couple. I remember the guy named Giovanni Lorenzo. He was the co-feature that night. He's a Dominican guy. I think let's say he was a welterweight. But he was a guy they were featuring in main events for a while. Never really came out to be anything, but he was one of those guys that they were backing early. He fought that night. I believe he picked up a win. Malik Scott was another one, the
Yep.
heavyweight. He wound up training with Wilder and also fighting him, ironically, and getting knocked out in a round. Then there was another guy, a Polish guy, I think Sendrowski, his name was, and then a Henry Crawford. It was only a 7 fight card, which wasn't that long. They used to do some marathon cards back in the day, when we used to go.
Yep.
So that was
Yeah.
kind of a short card
When
in
I
that
looked at the
advance.
card, I was saying, I can't really remember too many of the fights. I remember the
Right.
Baldomir Gatti fight, pretty vividly, but the rest of those fights, nobody else really stuck out.
Right.
Um, you know, we were, like you said, we were blessed with a couple other cards where we able to see some very good undercards live and stuff like that. But
Some up and coming
this
cards,
fight
right,
was just
right,
a Gatti Baldomir showcase, pretty much.
right. All right, so let's get into that fight. I watched it again the other night, and one thing I realized early on, it seemed like Gaddy had the right plan, and it was to box and use his jab and kind of stay on the outside. And then I kind of realized probably late in round three, I don't know if he hurt his hand because that's another thing about Gaddy. I mean, he hurt his hand. He broke his hand in basically every
Yeah,
fight in the
yeah.
last 7 or 8 fights of his career. So he always had injuries. But there was something that changed in the end of the third round. I think they were exchanging punches, and Baldomir just smashed him in a straight right hand, and you can kind of see
Yeah, it
Gaddy's
stunned him big
legs,
time. Yep,
right?
stunned him.
And it seemed like after that moment, he just kept getting hit with everything. And I don't know if there was something wrong with his legs, but watching him against like a guy like a Leonard Durin or watching him against like a Jesse James Leha, I mean, he was moving in, moving out. He was boxing beautifully. He's using his jab. He was
Landing
picking
body
his
shots.
right, picking his shots and throwing beautiful combinations to the body. But in this fight, it seemed like after that third round, he was just stuck in mud and he was moving in and out very slowly. And Baldomir just kept on his ass the whole time. And one thing about Baldomir is he had a great engine and he could
Yep.
just go all night and he just wouldn't let Gaddy breathe for a second. And, like I said, he kept backing Gaddy up and then he had him on the ropes. And then he started working the body as well. And Gaddy just couldn't get off. And Baldomir was just too much
Yep.
pressure.
I feel like during that third round, when Gotti got hit, he got stunned a little bit. He realized, okay, I'm in there with a big boy now because this is his first or was his first or second welterweight fight, right?
His second
Big,
welterweight
yep,
fight, right?
big step up for him. So these guys are able to absorb his punches a little better. I think he realized that he can be hurt fairly easy at this weight, and that he's having a real hard time hurting this guy. So the stuck in the mud thing was, legit, and I feel like he was in his head. And he just turned into once you got hit with that punch, he reverted right back to Toro Gotti, baby. Just
Right,
winging punches, standing on that dime, left hook, right hook.
right,
A nice flurry, bombing on each other, and that's exactly what Baldomir wanted. He wanted that dog fight with a man that he outweighed. And during that fight, I believe it's Jim Lampley, which this to me comes as a big surprise. He said that Baldomir walks around at 190 before he cuts weight. That's an MMA weight cut. That's not a boxing weight cut. That is
I think it was 180ish or I think
yeah, he
185, but
said he hit
either
up to
way,
190 during
right,
right before the fight. He said he
which
normally
is
walks around
nuts.
in the mid 180s, and during right before the fight, he hit 190. I believe he
Right.
said, which I
So,
said, like I said before, stunned the hell out of me because that's an MMA weight cut. That's not your
right,
average weight cut.
right,
He's walking around, a lot heavier than Toragatti. So that iron head of his
right.
is able to eat even more. So I feel like that was a big part of, you know, Gatti kind of losing confidence in himself. I don't want to say that, but that's how I feel.
And Baldomir wasn't much of a puncher. I believe going into that fight, he only had
That's
13
what they say.
knockouts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what they say. He didn't have knockouts, but the man hurt everybody. That right
right,
hand just came over the top, bro, and it hurt everybody. He
right,
had everybody on wobbly legs. Every major fight up until Floyd Mayweather, everybody got dazed, everybody got stung. Not much finishing power, but the man had some power.
right. And like I said, he was not coddled. I mean, this was a guy that he fought internationally. He fought in Denmark a few times. Obviously,
Yeah, travel the world.
right, like I said, that international title, he would fight for that belt, all over, and he would defend it, and he would win it, and he would win fights, and he was always like a bit of a road warrior, like I said, and then he'd go
Yep, he
home and
coined the
he'd
phrase. That would have
right,
been a perfect nickname for him.
right, and he'd stay busy, and he would beat some hometown fighters, and then whenever he get a shot in the states, he got the call, and he would
Came
come and
through.
he would fight. But like I said, let's go back to the Gatti fight, and kind of how Baldomir closed the show. Like you said, he wasn't known as a big puncher, but he was a relentless puncher. He came forward, he had a great engine. He would throw a ton of punches, and he just seemed to be too big for Gatti. And Gaddy's usually the
Yeah,
bigger guy in the fights. I
yeah.
think that's when he has, a big advantage. If you look at the fights, like I said, Durin and Leha and Thomas Domgard, another fighter, that he stopped, and he was naturally just like a bigger guy than a lot of those
Danish fighter
guys.
also, Damgod, right? Danish also.
Right. He was
Yeah,
also a Danish fighter, right? So with the Baldomir fight, I would say it's probably around the fifth or sixth round where I think it was about 50% of the punches that Baldomir was throwing, Gatti was getting hit with, and you
yeah,
could just tell it was going to be a long night. And I would always be frustrated with him not only not like blocking and fighting defensively, but him not clinching. Like when you get hurt and you're stung, he would like just put his head down, and like lay
yeah.
like that, and
He'd
and he'd
bob and
get hit
weave
with
without throwing a punch,
right, and
and
his
stick his head down, and just stay
right
low,
over
bend over. Yep,
his lead
yep.
foot, and he would get
Yeah,
tagged, and it's like so frustrating watching
you can
him.
tee off on him. Yep.
And I remember screaming from the crowd, just hold, clinch, clinch, just get through the round and see if you can get him into the late waters. Because obviously, Gatti always had that punch. So he was hoping to just land one of those big
Yeah,
shots
yep.
and
All it
take him
takes is
out.
one.
All right. I think he needs to go more to the body too. I think when Gaddy's really on, when he's really sharp, he goes to the body a lot. So I think he made a mistake by not going to the body. But let's get to about the finish of this fight. I want to say was it a ninth round TKO or was it 10th round
Yeah,
TKO?
ninth round.
Ninth round TKO. All right. So he stops him there. It was a couple of right hands that hurt him,
Nice
and
foreign. Yep.
then yeah, about the last 20 seconds, it was kind of fun to watch Gaddy um, just go for it. He knew that he was going to get stopped, and he threw some of the biggest left hand hooks that you'll see, and he was just missing
Yep.
Baldomir. But again, Baldomir was a natural welterweight, cutting down from, like you said, 190 pounds.
Yeah.
So he was a big, strong welterweight. Didn't have a typically big punch, but a very strong, mauling type of guy. And he's one of those guys I think,
Relentless.
right, relentless, and he looks a lot easier to, coin up a a blueprint for him than it is. He's one of those guys that when you get in
Yeah,
there, it's like,
absolutely.
wow, he's a lot stronger than I really.
And
And
he's long too.
right,
A lot
and
longer than expected.
right, and
Nice, nice freaking wingspan on the guy.
he's used to getting to that 147 and being the biggest, stronger, more relentless guy in there, and he was just
Yep.
too much for Gaddy, and he stopped Gotti, and that was it. And we always thought that he was going to retire after that. He definitely should have, for sure. But so after he stops Gotti, Baldomir went on a massive tour of his hometown. Getting the welcome home parade for winning the
Mm.
the title. Actually, he got that when he beat Zab Judah, but I think once he defended that title, he really got accepted as
Yep. You
being
go from paper champion to real champion with that
right
one defense.
a real top, Argentinian fighter, and the people really got behind him after that point. And then he got to get some really big fights and some really fun fights. So I'm going to get into those two now, unless you want to add to anything else with the Gatti and the Baldomir fight.
Well, I'd just like to go back and talk about a little bit of Gaddy's fights leading up to the Baldomir fight.
Really becoming, the super champ that he
Yeah,
was.
pretty boy.
So
It was pretty boy to money at that point, pretty much.
right, exactly.
He was
That's when he
really becoming Money
started
Mayweather.
really
But really
talking
quick,
a lot and everything, and becoming a star.
yeah, become the global sensation. So really quick, leading up to the Baldomir fight, Vittorio Gatti and I stringing together a couple wins, looking real strong out there. The fan favorite. Everybody, everybody has to go see a Gatti fight when he's in town. So 3 fights before the Baldomir fight, for Jesse James Leha, and what happened to be where he was the bigger man. Like you previously stated, how he's used to being the bigger man. He had a great showing. I believe it was a left hook in round 4
Yeah,
that brought
I
Leha
believe
to
he
the ground.
stopped
Right,
him in
left hook to the liver
I
on
think it
round
was in the
4.
fifth. I think it was in the fifth round.
Okay, either fourth or
But yeah,
fifth. Midway around the fight stoppage, dropped him with the left hook to the liver. I forgot how the fight finished. I know there was another knockdown after that. I can't really remember, but I know that it was 2 knockdowns. One was a left hook to the liver. The other one finished the fight. Jesse James kind of stayed there. And he's like, all right, this guy's got me, man. I'm just going to stay down for the 10 count. I'll get up when it's all
Right.
over. Short this one up to the L column. Move on from here. The fight after that was when he took a loss to Floyd Mayweather, like we were
Right.
talking about. We all kind of knew what we were going to see, but we all had high hopes for our boy. Didn't go out the way he wanted. Obviously, didn't go the way anybody wanted it. Kind of got outclassed a little bit on that one, but that was a fight that it was just styles make fights, and that one style is just that much more effective than the other one. And then the fight before, he beat Thomas Damgaard, the Danish fighter. And you want to talk about that a little bit, right? That fight went a
Yeah,
long distance.
we went to that one too. Now he actually stopped Domgard, but I went back and watched that fight too. I'm glad you bring that up. Well, first of all, I'll talk about the Leha fight because obviously Leha, he was more of a lightweight,
Yeah,
and he fought I think in maybe even the featherweight slam. He even fought some fights with
great fighter,
Zuma
great fighter.
Nelson. You're right. He fought the likes of Costa
Just
Zoo,
small.
Mickey Ward. He fought a lot of really really good fighters, and Leha was a very durable fighter, and one of the San Antonio kids, nice little puncher, good combinations, and he was just a really tough opponent. And he actually picked up a really big win, another fight we were lucky enough to be at when he beat, but who was a massive prospect, if you remember, Francisco Panchito Bojado.
Panchito, yep.
Right, we were at that fight. That was
Nando Vargas
actually
Jr.
right. He was the co-feature, another guy from what's Vargas' hometown, Oxnard,
Oxnard,
California.
California. Yep.
Right, another fighter from there, and that was on the undercard of Gatti and Durin, and that was a huge win for Leha, very big
Yeah.
upset. I want to say it was about 3-4 or 4-1 favorite
That was a
against.
stoppage, right?
No, it was a decision. It was a
Decision? Okay.
decision, but he might have knocked Bajado down throughout the fight. And again,
I
Bajado
remember that
was
being action packed. I remember that being a
right,
really good fight.
really
Yeah.
good fight, and he won decision over that. And that kind of what got him the Gatti fight. And people didn't know how that was going to go. I think I obviously favored Gabby. I thought it would go with decision because again, Leha is very durable.
Very durable,
But
yep.
from the beginning of that fight, I mean, again, that was one of my favorite performances by Gatti. He came out with a blistering jab,
Yep.
beautiful punch to the body, and he just looked so much bigger and stronger than Leha. And he actually hurt him with a right hand.
Yeah, that was a sick right
The
hand too,
right hand
bro.
that he always breaks.
Yep.
He threw it
He turned
very
his face with
sharp,
it. Everything
right,
was
and
beautiful.
it kind of lifted up
Yep.
Leha's chin, and he just went flying back like, "Wow, what was that?" That's a real 140-pound fighter who's probably walking around at about 180 pounds.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
he
And you know what?
felt
That's
every
what it
bit of
was.
that.
So you just jogged my memory. So it was the straight right that dropped him the first time, and the left
Right.
hook to the liver that finished the fight.
Well, I don't think it was I don't think it was a liver shot. He might have hurt him to the body. Then I remember him landing something high in the head. He threw a good left hook, like right on like above his ear. That I think was the one to put him
Uh,
down for the end.
yeah, it was
And then
Durin
he
that he
knew.
stopped the liver
Right.
shot.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So yeah, after the Leha fight, again, it was a great performance from him. Stopped Leha. I think he retired Leha after that. And then he went
Yeah.
on to fight Thomas Damgaard, who's another one of these Danish guys. He got a padded record, came in. But hey, as a promoter, that's a promoter's dream. You
It
get
is
this
promoted
guy,
wet dream.
he's 30-0, and he punches like a feather duster.
Yeah, and he looked like he did not belong in that fight for the first 4 or 5 rounds.
Right.
He looked awful. Choppy little jabs, real awkward punches. Just looked like somebody you just, oh, come on, like, get this guy out of here. How's he in the same ring with him?
Right.
But then as the fight progressed, he became warmed up. The early nerves, because it was his first fight in the States, right?
Yes, that was his first fight in the States. Yes.
Yeah, so the nerves probably wore off around the third, fourth round. That's when he started to look a little. But I remember watching that fight, and when I did, a little research on it, earlier, I was like, why is this guy in the ring? How did Gatti get this? He must have been loving this.
Right.
And
Well,
then,
like I said, the promoters they know how to match. That's one of the hardest jobs about the promote the managers really is making your fighter stay busy, and look good and keep winning. I mean that's one of the
Yep.
the most
Hey, get him over the States for that big payday. Once or twice,
challenging
you did your
things.
job.
Right. That's it. And Gatti, that fight though, watching it again, what I didn't realize is Gatti got hit 300 times in that fight. I mean, he didn't block his face.
No, he
And
didn't care
again,
about anything.
Damgard, he couldn't crack an egg. He couldn't hurt him.
No,
And
he
he was
couldn't dust the
throwing
furniture.
those short little,
Gross. They were gross.
punches,
In
right.
all reality, they were not what
Right.
you'd expect a high level boxer to be throwing.
They were arm
His
punches.
footwork was awful. Everything
Right.
looked just bad. But the awkwardness, creates problems for everybody.
And it was a fight to get into the weight class. Like I said, that was his first fight at welterweight for Gatti. So that was a beautiful introduction into the division. He just got hit so much, and in my opinion, if I'm Buddy McGirt, I'm working with him where it's like we got to work on our defense because we can't go up and fight legit welterweights and be getting hit 400, 300
Yeah.
something times,
Yep.
throughout. I think it was an 11 round. The ref stopped it. On Gatti just threw a beautiful like short little right hook inside, and it kind of just folded Dom Guard, and the ref just knew his face was all busted up, and it was
Yeah.
time to just step in, and they stopped it.
Yeah.
You
That was a
know,
great tailor-made fight for Toro Gotti.
right. So he rattled off a few wins, and then he got in there. With Baldomir. Baldomir was too much for him, and Baldomir went through. And like we were saying, it was almost like Gatti was tailor made for Baldomir and not the other way around. I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
going into that fight thinking like, hey, this is his. No, he's gonna win another
He's going to
title
stand right in
here.
front of Gotti. Gotti's going to
Right.
maul him.
Right.
He's not going to be able to stalk him. He's not going to be able to walk him down like that. It'll
Right.
never happen.
And we
Because all
figured
we had
he.
was one real fight to compare it to.
Right. We figured he was gonna stop him, and that was the furthest thing from the truth. So then after that fight, like I said, Baldomir got some massive fights after. So I want to get into those real quick. The next one was I want to say November of 2006, where he fought against Floyd Money Mayweather, which was the real king of the welterweight division, and really the time when he was starting to, stake his claim as the top pound for pound fighter, in the world.
Yep. The
So
global phenomenon. This is
right,
pretty much the fight that turned him into the global phenomenon. Up until then, everybody respected him. Everybody knew he was one of the greatest, but they didn't
right,
realize he was the greatest.
right. He
And
was
this
he
is
was he,
that ascent right here started, in my opinion, right here.
right. He had some massive wins, over guys like Diego Corrales and stuff
Yep.
like that.
Greatest, one of my favorite fighters of all
Right.
time, Diego Chico
Same here.
Corrales. R.I.P. to the legend.
Right.
The
One of the
heart of a
reasons.
champion, the power of a freaking heavyweight. When he landed those short little hooks on you, man, it was over.
One of the reasons we both got into the game for sure
Yep.
was Diego Corral, so we got to give him some love as well. But like, let's get into the Mayweather fight. Did you go back and watch that Mayweather and Baldomir?
Um, I didn't. I didn't get a chance to. I remember a good amount of it. I just remember, Baldomir kind of getting outclassed. He thought it was gonna, he couldn't really do the come forward style against Floyd
Right.
Mayweather. Um, I remember him getting tagged up pretty good. I don't really remember him landing anything big. I feel like he never really had his moment in that fight. Part of one of the reasons why I didn't really go back and watch that.
Right.
I did watch the Gatti Floyd Mayweather fight because I remember, that was action packed. And for some reason, my recollection of the Baldomir Mayweather fight, I just don't remember any big moments. I
Right.
could be wrong. It's been a while since I watched it, but I just don't
Right.
remember that being, the fight where I got to go back. I got to watch, round 4. I got to watch round 7, something like
Right.
that.
Yeah, it was a very dominating performance for Mayweather.
Typical.
Right. He literally fought the way that Gatti kind of wanted to fight, but unfortunately,
Pepper in the jab. Yep.
there's some gifts that Mayweather has that, in my
Nobody has it.
opinion, there's not too many people to ever walk this planet to have the type of reflexes and the type of skills and the timing that Floyd had. So for him, it was just an easy fight. He kind of just stayed on the outside. He was jabbing. He was countering. He was shoulder rolling a lot, and shooting that beautiful right uppercut. And
Typical Floyd. Yep.
right, just boxing around Mayweather, Baldomir, and just landing a good stiff jab over and over. But you know what? Baldomir really held his own, and he made for a fun fight. He kept just winging his shots and coming forward, and he was playing the macho stuff because he knew Mayweather couldn't really hurt him.
Yep.
And he was kind of standing in the middle of the ring and trying to bait Mayweather in
Yeah,
and
hoping
try
to
to
get
get
him
him
while he was punching.
right, trying to get him into like a barn burner. But Mayweather was just way too smart for
Yep. That ain't
Baldomir.
gonna work on Pretty Boy.
All right, and he just stayed on the outside and boxed beautifully. Wound up winning the WBC strap, and that was at the like I said, the end of 2006, and that kind of really propelled Mayweather to just go on to stardom. I remember in '07 he went to fight De La Hoya, and that was a big mega fight.
Yep. It's huge.
But after the Mayweather fight for Baldomir, we're gonna go to another really fun fight, and a guy that it was just an amazing, Hall of Fame type of fighter, and that's against Vernon Forrest in July of 2007.
Who looked
So,
like an absolute Goliath in that fight.
right, same thing. I think he walked around at about 175, 180
Yeah.
pounds.
That was a big dude, man.
Right, and there was just something about Vernon when he was in the ring, man. Just such a big,
Yep.
opposing guy for a welterweight. I mean,
That's a
one of the
big
biggest
presence for, yep.
welterweights.
giant presence for a welterweight.
And obviously, he came off those two massive wins over Mosley. But then he actually lost to Ricardo Mayorga
Yep.
twice after the big wins over Mosley. So people didn't really
Yeah,
know.
won by a pretty devastating knockout. He was kind of all over the canvas that night. And in the
Right.
second fight, he battled back. It was a close fight.
Right.
I think it was a split decision. His rematch with Mayoga. I can't remember. I just remember it being a lot closer. I
Yeah.
remember being real hyped for that fight. I remember you know
Yeah.
that was
Some
another rush
people.
from hype because that was literally Mayorga's rise to fame. That fight
Right.
put him on the map. With his
Right.
little downward chop punches every time freaking Vernon Forrest would try and
Right.
bob and weave. That was his coming out party. And in
Right.
the second fight, he still won, but it could have went either way.
Yeah. Now it's just one of those fights where the styles really just mess with
Yeah, no
Vernon.
one ever seen the
You
style
know.
like Mayweather until that
Right.
point, man. That was one of the craziest, styles ever.
Right. Sometimes when you have those guys that are really good, just purist boxers that like to move and like to
The
stick and
awkwardness can get
jab,
him.
sometimes you just start winging your punches and bring like a street fighting mentality to the fight. And sometimes they don't know what to do with it. And if you could
Yeah, they're not
pop
used to it.
like
Yep,
Mayoga could pop, you could hurt somebody. So,
yep.
after those losses, I guess no one really knew what you would get with Vernon. And I believe he had a shoulder surgery leading up to the fight with Baldomir. And if you look at Baldomir's style, it's kind of very similar to Mayoga. So I think going into
Minus the
this
power,
fight,
yeah.
right, exactly, minus the big power, right. But as far as coming forward, they have a similar style.
Yep.
I think people weren't favoring, Baldomir, but I think people thought it was going to be a very close fight, and it was. If
Yeah,
you
both
watch the
had the
fight,
name at that point, so people weren't, surprised when you
right,
actually, put together a couple good shots on him. He dazed him. I can't remember what round, but he landed that famous Baldomir right, man.
right.
It's like sneaky. It comes over the top almost, but it's almost straight. It's not exactly an overhand, not exactly a straight, but when it lands, man, it gets it.
Right. Yeah, he hurt Vernon with a shot, which was very surprising to me because, again, other than the fight with Mayorga, the first one, you never really seen him in too much trouble, Vernon Forrest.
Nope.
So he was a very durable fighter. And, again, Bolin made that fight really fun. He came forward a lot.
Yeah, he did make
Like you
that fun.
said, landing the right hand a lot. And let me tell you something, Vernon Forrest was landing some massive
Bombs, bro. Bombs.
bombs in that fight. It was a
Yep.
really fun fight. And
Control.
Boldemir
He's keeping him
was
at the very
just,
end of his punches, and a bang,
right,
punch right down the pipe, lifts Baldomir's head up to the sky, a
right.
bunch of times. And Baldomir, man, you need a shovel. You need a
Right.
shovel right there,
You
guy.
really need a sledgehammer to hurt
Yep.
him, especially to the head. And Vernon just boxed really well. He kind of, again, did the style that Gatti, I guess, was intending to doing because he was like boxing a lot, jabbing a lot, moving.
Yeah, he was trying to turn into a much more of a boxer, take a lot less
Right.
damage at the time, Gotti. But
And he was turning
that
him
fourth
and
round, he went back to the Toro.
right. Vernon was using his leg, his legs a lot and being in and out and just not getting into too much of a firefight with Bolden
Smart,
because
yeah, smart fight.
even Vernon knew as big as he was, he's like, I don't want to be trading with this guy. So
Yep,
he kept boxing. He go on to win a decision in a very fun fight.
yep, very lopsided decision at that too.
Right. And then obviously Gatti went on, so he returned that month as well in 2007 in a very, very poor showing. He should have never been in that fight. I think he should have hung it up after the Baldomir fight, but he fought against Alfonso Gomez, and he was stopped, I think, in like about 5 or 6 rounds.
And
So,
that would be his last fight, correct?
right, that was his last fight. He was stopped. And yeah, he would kind of go off into the sunset. Everyone kind of knows the tragic story that happened to him
Yeah.
and his son, which is even said R.I.P. to both of the Gaddies. Um, but after that, Baldomir kind of was pretty much done with his big fights. He did get a shot at Canelo, and I want to say it was in 2010 on the undercard of I want to say maybe Shane Mosley and Mayweather could have been on that undercard.
Yeah, top man, I don't remember.
But Canelo absolutely destroyed him with a
Yeah,
left hook. He went face down, and God bless Bolden because he was getting up, I think, around 7 or 8, and he didn't make it, luckily. But he got knocked out by Canelo. Had a couple of various little comebacks in between. I believe he actually fought Marco Antonio Rubio as well, which was a fight at the end of
yeah,
his career, in Rubio's hometown in Mexico. And I believe
another great fighter.
yeah, I believe that he stopped Baldomir. I want to say in 5 or 6 rounds. Baldomir actually quit on his stool, ironically. But that was just an older version of who Baldomir was,
Exactly. Yep.
and that's really it, man. That's kind of a cap on the episode. Unless you want to add anything to this fight review, classic fight review of Turo Gatti and Baldomir, 20-year anniversary, this July 22nd, 2026.
One thing I would like to add is Speaking about birthdays earlier, while doing some research, I found out that me and Carlos Baldomir share the same birthday, which
Wow.
is pretty freaking ironic for the episode
Really?
today. Yep. So I
Wow.
was doing a little research, obviously seeing where he's from. I wanted to see his wingspan. I wanted to see his tail of the tape pretty much. And I seen on the bottom April 30th, and I said, "Holy
Wow.
crap!" I said, "What are the odds of that?"
That's amazing.
But yeah,
It's
so
always fun hearing the celebrities that you share the same birthdays with,
yep. Especially when
for
you have no
sure.
idea, and you just so
Right.
happen to stumble upon it, on the perfect day.
Right.
But other than that, I'd just like to say, it's been fun. Can't wait to do a lot more of these classic fights. It's what I live for, man. I love the old school boxing. Boxing's still great now, still a great sport. Combat sports are my thing. Not big football, not really big basketball, baseball. You put me in front of a boxing ring or an octagon, man, and I'm there all night.
That's it.
So be plenty of these more, and I'm looking forward to it, man.
That's it. And I want to say thank you for joining us. I appreciate you. And like I said, we're going to be releasing this episode on Wednesday, July 22nd.
And don't forget to watch the Jerry Cooney interview. It was a great interview. There's two parts, I believe. Had a lot of fun watching those. Just want to make sure everybody else gets to those. Give those a view, like and subscribe to the channel. Not only is this, a fun outlet to talk, but Chris is very passionate about boxing. If you're gonna want to watch a show and you're gonna want to listen to people talk and about sports, about this, you want them to actually care about it. So if you want to watch a show where people care and they really like what they're watching, this is the show to watch for you.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, bro. And thanks again for joining us. And we'll talk soon.
No doubt.
All
See
right.
you later.
Later.